Welcome back, guys. Okay, this is my fourth deck profile of the day. I'm going to call it a day after this and stop recording because I think I ran out of decks that are fully completed. This is my newest deck that I've made. This is not a deck that I had previously, so this is brand spanking new that I put together. It's Uril the Miststalker. He's an older card from Shards of Alara, I think, initially. It's a 5/5 for 5 mana hexproof in Naya colors. He gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. I think that's such a cool concept. People call it Voltron. I get that, but the way I've built the deck, it's not just him. Like, if you go, hey, you can't ever cast Uril the Miststalker, I wouldn't be like, I guess I can't play my deck. I'd be like, okay, I have other things. It's such a cool deck. I've never made an aura heavy deck, so I think it's just such a cool concept. Anyway, it's a deck that I thought about making like a year ago, and then I was like, I'm just not in a good position to try and do it. And then I came back to the game, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna make the thing. I've only played it once. I played it this last weekend, so a week ago at this point. I had a lot of fun with it. It did okay. It won 2 games. I think we played 4 total. It only won 2. But anyway, yeah, let's get into it. Oh, by the way, the hexproof on him, it's great. I think hexproof's kind of busted. But it does save his ass from getting like destroyed. It saves your ass because otherwise you'd be screwed. I would play this card even if it didn't have hexproof. If it didn't have hexproof, I'd be like, yeah, I'll still play him. Okay, so same thing: 13 plains, 13 forests, 13 mountains. We play 39 lands total. The deck is heavy on white, has a pretty good size of green. Red, it's running a little shy on as far as pips in the deck, but I still think it's enough where we're going to be fine. And like I said, I try to balance out my decks the best I can. Okay, so instead of creatures first, because we run the most enchantments out of anything else, we're going to do enchantments first. So Dryad's Favor. So obviously with Uril, this deck is very aura focused. There might be some auras that you guys notice I'm not running. It's not that I'm completely opposed to them. I either don't have them, don't have quick access to them, or maybe, like I said, I'm not that crazy about them. Like, for instance, I don't run Rancor in this deck. It's a great card. It's just, I'm not, like, it gets +2/+0, has trample for 1. I get that, and it goes back to your hand. But this is not a deck where I'm trying to cast the same auras over and over again, and I'm not really, I don't know. It's okay to me. I prefer something like this. Enchant creature has Forest Walk. Well, green's a very popular color, as obviously we're running it. A lot of people are going to have green, and I'd like the ability for Uril to just be like, I don't have to worry about trample because you can't block me anyway. So there's that. Messenger Speed, cool 1-drop in red. Enchant creature has trample and haste. I like that. Those are 2 good things. All that glitters, enchant creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and/or enchantment you control. Well, we run more than just auras as enchantments, so I like that. We run a few artifacts. Yeah, All That Glitters I think is a really cool card for 2 mana. Angelic Gift for 2 mana. Enchant creature gets, you get to draw a card when this enters, and then enchant creature has flying. I like this because for 2 mana, I feel like we're getting 2 things. I feel like we're getting our value back. We give a creature flying, and we get to draw a card. There's a 1-drop, I believe, that gives a creature flying, but the difference is you don't get to draw a card. Well, there are instances where it's like, I really would like that draw, and we have a few ways of reducing the mana cost, so for a lot of times we can play this for 1, draw a card, and give the creature flying. And Uril really likes flying. Fists of Ironwood, I think this is a cool-ass card. So enchant creature, when this thing enters the battlefield, you make 2 1/1 saplings. We're not going to do any attacking with those saplings or buffing them up. They'll just make for good blockers. Enchant creature has trample. Uril doesn't have trample, and there's a few other creatures that we can buff up that don't have trample, so it's cool. Cool red one, Volcanic Strength. Enchant creature gets +2/+2 and has Mountain Walk. Giving, land walk of any type I think is really cool. Red's maybe not as popular as green, but at the same time, a lot of people like to run red. Red has some spicy stuff. So I think giving our stuff Mountain Walk and that generic +2/+2 bonus is nice. Ancestral Mask may be the best aura in this whole deck. Enchant creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. That includes our opponent stuff, and we are mostly running enchantments, so we're going to get a lot out of that. Armadillo Cloak. Me and my buddies, we make the Kevin Smith reference from his Batman Returns commentary video, Armadillo Woman, because that literally is what that looks like. Enchant creature gets +2/+2, has trample. Whenever enchant creature deals damage, you gain that much life. That is technically not lifelink. It's not worded that way. So if you have an opponent's creature that says your opponents lose lifelink, that Armadillo Cloak gets around that. So it's kind of cool. Enchantress's Presence. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. Pretty self-explanatory, and we like that. Fervor, because we'd like Uril to be able to attack immediately, or other creatures. Creatures you control have haste. That's good. Fires of Yavimaya, aka Fervor number 2. Creatures you control have haste. We can only play this because we're in Gruul colors, but we like that. Gift of Immortality. I'd been running this card in Zur for a while just as a like, hey, this would be okay. This is a better use for it in this deck. The enchanted creature, when the enchanted creature would die, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So the enchanted creature comes back immediately. Return Gift of Immortality to the battlefield attached to that creature at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, if your opponent has a targeted removal, well, I guess they couldn't target Uril, but if they had a board wipe, let's say, the Wrath of God, Uril would die, this falls off, Uril comes back, and it's like, unless they have another follow-up where they have that targeted removal or they have it on a creature, the Gift of Immortality is going to come back at the end step, and it's like, you got to do this all over again. So I think that's really good. That's out of Theros. Theros had a lot of great enchantment stuff. Light of Promise, this is one of the newer additions. This is a card I run in Zur, but we have a decent amount of ways to gain life. I had to take out, I took out Eldrazi Conscription out of this deck, not because it's bad, it's great, but I needed Eldrazi Conscription to go in a different deck. I will show you guys that probably here in the next week or so. But I was like, well, we have a decent amount of ways to gain life in this deck, so Light of Promise, because this can make our stuff stronger. Whenever you gain life, put that many +1/+1s on this creature. Light of Promise is just it's a solid aura. It's not always going to work for you, but sometimes it might. And one of the cards it synergizes with is Mael's Aria. This is a card that I used to try to run in Dinosaurs, but I noticed, I was like, man, I don't ever get anything more than just the first effect, because a lot of my dinosaurs are big, but they're not always more than 10 power, so it's like I don't get to keep going. And I don't remember ever where I got to dino up to more than 20 power. In this deck, oh my gosh, this is so easy to pull off. I don't brag about this, like I don't want to broadcast this, because my opponents, my buddies that I play with, they don't know this card's in the deck yet, so it'll be a surprise to them when I get it out. So at the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 on each creature you control. So that is kind of cool. If you control a creature power 5 or greater, guess what? Uril's automatically 5, so we're going to get that effect if he's out. Those Saprolings that we made, we can make those slightly stronger, but we have some other creatures I'll show you in a second. So if you control a creature with power 10 or greater, you get to immediately gain 10 life. This is like right after the first effect. So we easily can do that, and the ability to gain 10 life synergizes with Light of Promise, which means that we can put 10+1/+1s on Uril or something else. And then, if that creature has power 20 or greater, which we possibly will have, then I get to win the game. Look, I'm not that person that's trying to always win the game as best and fast as I possibly can, because there's cards that I don't run in certain decks that are way too easy. But I like Mael's Aria as a card, and I'm like, this is a card I'm not going to be able to put in every deck I can. It's not going to win the game that easily. But in this deck, I'm like, it's pretty cool. And it does the life gain stuff and the +1/+1, so I really like that card. Shielded by Faith, enchant creature is indestructible. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may attach Shield of Faith by Faith to that creature. I don't really think I'm ever going to put this onto something else unless my opponent, I don't know, did something where they said, like, you know, certain creatures can't attack, or I don't know, because they can't target Uril, so I don't really know what I would switch it onto. But Shielded by Faith, just a good card for 3. That's great. This is like my personal tech. I mean, many people probably would say this isn't that great, but I like it. For 4 mana, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each planes you control. It has flying. Even though this isn't like mono white where we're running nothing but planes, we can search out a ton of planes pretty easily. And then, yeah, it's a buff while on top of like having the flying. So I like that. And the way I view it, if you have like at least like 3 planes when you get this out, giving a creature +3/+3 and also flying for 4 mana, that's a pretty good trade-off. And normally we can do that pretty easily. Fruit of the First Tree. A card that, like I said, I don't think you see many Uril players running, but I feel like they should. For 4 mana, when an enchanted creature dies, you gain X life, draw X cards, where X is his toughness. Look, are we planning on Uril to die? No, we can make him indestructible. All that kind of stuff is true. But if we can get him beefy and they play like a Wrath or something like that, and let's say we don't have anything to make him indestructible, we're not getting so punished where we're like, man, we're screwed. I'm just out of this game. We're like, okay, cool. I'll gain a ton of life. I'll redraw my hand, and I'll be good to go on the next turn. Pattern of Rebirth, great aura that, once again, I think more people should be playing in an Uril deck in general, in an aura deck with these colors. So when the enchanted creature dies, I get to go grab any creature I want from my library, put it on the battlefield. I was running some bigger creatures earlier when I had this deck, and I was trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. but I eventually had to make cuts and I took some of those stronger stuff out because I was like, well, there's going to be times where I draw those cards and they don't do a whole lot. So we still have good creatures we can get out with this. And there's one in particular that's a low CMC card that you guys might know that's pretty good. Sage's Reverie. You normally want to save this card till like if you have other auras to play before this, save this one, play the other ones first. So it says whenever this card enters the battlefield, draw a card for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. So it doesn't have to be to the creature that you attach this to. It could be to if you have other creatures that have auras as well, you get to draw off it. Normally, by the time that I'm playing this, I'm normally drawing at least 3, usually 4 or 5. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature that's attached to a creature, not just yours. So once again, if you have other creatures that have auras attached to them, you're getting buffed for that as well. Another personal tech of mine, Sarah's Embrace. So it costs 4. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has flying, and also has vigilance. That's 3 good things for 4 mana. I feel like that's worth the value. Because we always want to give our stuff flying. That's great. This is actually, I think it's the only card in this deck that can give something vigilance. But we have ways of searching it out, so it's not that hard to get to. Sheev Palpatine's Embrace, as I like to call it. Could be Palpatine up there, like doing some crazy stuff. Look at the flavor text on this. When you see the world as a dragon sees it, everything looks fit to burn. Love that. So we want to balance out the mana pips. So this is a cool card I found in red that I was like, yeah, this could work. So the last one said it gets +2/+2 flying and vigilance. This doesn't give our creature vigilance. It does give +2/+2 and flying, but it also gives it fire breathing, which we have ways to grab like every land out of our deck and put on the battlefield. So this has a way of being able to actually like buff by a lot and add that fire breathing onto it. So I just think it's a cool card. You do not have to run that card, but I think it's cool. Mantle of the Agents. I'll be honest with you, even though auras fall off pretty quickly, this is not a card that I foresee using a whole lot, but I like having it as an option that like if my opponent removed Uril and I need to like get all my stuff back, I could do it. So for anyone that doesn't know, it costs 5. Enchant creature you control, whenever it enters the battlefield, return any number of target aura and or equipments from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to an enchanted creature. We don't run any equipment, so it'll just be auras. And the cool, sometimes people think auras suck because they fall off when the creature dies, but this is a card that kind of makes use of that. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it. Like I said, depending on how many auras we have, I think the most I've ever gotten is like 5. So, the bonus of that kind of pays for itself right there. But the main thing is it's a rebound when your opponent's like, oh, okay, I got you. I'll remove that thing. All your auras are gone. You're going to have to build from scratch. And then you like, I've been holding Mantle in my hand, so nah. Sphere of Safety. This isn't a Pillow Fort deck, but because we run so many damn enchantments, I mean, this just helps. The like, hey, I got 7 enchantments out there. It costs 7 per creature to attack me. Just an added defense, because I'll be honest, the best defense for this deck normally is offense. Celestial Mantle, a cool aura that I've been wanting to run in other decks for a while, and finally when I decided to build this deck, I'm like, sweet, I get to run Celestial Mantle. The enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, double its controller's life total. That's great. Obviously this helps with Light of Promise. This will buff our creature up, and Light of Celestial Mantle, that'll just help. Okay, one of my other favorite auras that I've been trying to use in other decks, and finally I'm like, this is perfect. Enchant creature has flying. Okay, is that worth 6 mana? No, but when enchanted creature does combat damage to a player, make that many 1/1 Saproling creature tokens. Okay, so remember that Miles Aria that can put a +1/+1 on each creature? Okay, so we can make a strong army. And because we're going to be doing a lot of damage because Uril's going to be ginormous, that's a lot of saplings that we could use to block on the crackback. Cool card, Prodigious Growth for 6 mana. Enchant creature gets +7/+7 and has trample. That's good value to me, and we do like things to have trample. Sunbird's Invocation, because the way I build decks, if it's got red in it, it's going to run Sunbirds. Colossification. Enchanted creature, when it enters the battlefield, it gets tapped, and then that creature gets +20/+20. So I will be honest, in general, I'm not looking to use this on Uril, although I did this last weekend, and I used it to kill my opponents. Not attacking with, I didn't use it to attack with. There's another combo piece that this card is very important to. But we have ways of getting this out. Classification, this is mainly great for you have ways of cheating this card out, and there's one card in particular that can cheat this out, and anyway, if it doesn't have haste, you just go okay, I'll grab Classification. I'll show you in a second. So that's it for the enchantments. That's a lot of them. All right, on to the creatures. Champion of the Flame. This is like a mini Uril that doesn't have hexproof, but It's a 1/1 for 2 mana that has trample, and it gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. You see the resemblance? It's nice. I like that. 2-drop Herald of the Pantheon. Great card for an enchantment deck. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast one, you gain 1 life. The life gain is minuscule, but the mana reduction is what we're after. Core Spirit Dancer. Once again, kind of a diet Uril. Doesn't have Hexproof, but gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. So the guy that we just showed off, the Champion of the Flame, he can also be ran in an equipment deck, but as we said, this is not one of those. And also, whenever you cast an aura spell, you get the draw card. So that's a double whammy that I love. Core Spirit Dancer, great card. All right, guys. So this is kind of like the mini commander of this deck that's hidden. Light Paws Emperor's Voice. This is a card I've had for a while that I was like, I want to try to run this in something. A lot of people can run this as their commander, and that's fine, but you're in mono white. In this deck, it's so much better. And my opponents kept getting pissed off because they're like, damn, do you shuffle? Because you keep getting Light Paws. I'm like, I don't really know how, but yeah, it keeps coming up. Sorry, but so this card's great. It's probably the best. Like Mitch from Commander's Quarters calls something like the Golden Pig. This is probably the Golden Pig of the deck. Excuse me. Whenever an aura enters your battlefield under control, as long as you cast that aura, so you can't cheat stuff and then use this, but as long as you cast the aura, you can search your library for an aura with mana value less than or equal to that aura and has a different name. And then each aura you control, which is commander, so everything's going to have a different name. Put that card on the battlefield attached to Light Paws, then shuffle. So basically, if I drop a 4-drop aura onto Uril the Miststalker and Light Paws is out, I'm going to go grab a 4-drop out of my deck, 4-drop or less, but I'm going to go grab a 4-drop out of my deck and put it onto Light Paws. This stacks so much and so well. The value that you get out of it is just amazing. Starfield Mystic, reducing our enchantments by 1, and then whenever an enchantment I control is put into a grave for the battlefield, he gets a +1. So yeah, if they knock off Uril somehow and he had like 5 auras, this thing's going to go up to a 7/7, and it's still reducing mana. That's pretty cool. This thing is so cool. I didn't realize this card existed, and I was already building the deck, and I was like, where has this thing been? You won't find this on EDH Rec, yet you should. It gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. So similar, it's not that flame guy that we showed earlier. This only works with auras. It doesn't have trample or anything like that, but it's in white. It's cool. It's a 2/3. I like it. Plus, it looks like it has a lightsaber. Mesa Enchantress. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We're going to be doing a lot of that. This guy's actually kind of like he's like $4 or $5. He's kind of expensive. Nomad Mythmaker. For 3 mana, he's a 2/2. You can pay a white, tap him, put target aura in a graveyard into play attached to a creature you control. I don't have to explain to you why that's really good. Satyr Enchanter. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. That's got to be in here. Setessan Champion's basically that, although because we're doing auras, this is actually better. Whenever an enchantment enters your battlefield, put a +1/+1 on Setessan Champion and then draw a card. Well, because we're doing auras, we have a few cards that let us return auras from our graveyard to the battlefield. They won't be cast, but we'll get more use out of this thing. So Setessan Champion, really good. Storm Herald, really cool card that I have not been able to use yet, but I'm excited for when I do. And don't get me wrong, is this situational? Yes, but it's similar to Mantle of the Ancients that's like, hey, at the beginning, this card might not be that great, but it's a good rebound card in case our opponents think they have us on the ropes. This is a good, hey, I can come back from this. So it's a 3/2 human shaman with haste. I love the Theros Beyond Death. Theros Beyond Death was a great set as far as the artwork. The cards look great. So it has haste. Whenever it enters the battlefield, return any number of auras from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to creatures you control. It doesn't have to be him, but because he has haste, even if he's all you got, that's a great one. Exile those auras at the beginning of your next end step. If those auras would leave the battlefield, exile them instead of putting them anywhere else. So what it's telling you is that, look, if you're going to grab all your auras back and put them onto stuff, those are getting, if the game's not over by the end of the turn, those are getting exiled regardless of what you want to do with them. So there's no way to avoid that. But the way I look at it, if we're in a position where we've got a decent amount of auras in our graveyard and we're on the ropes, this card, yeah, if my auras get exiled at the end, okay, so be it. But I have a way of possibly finishing the game out, and he's a cool card in that regard. A card that I don't think you see in Uril decks, but I was looking through cards and I was like, oh crap, I forgot about this one. Wireless Soul of Steel. He's normally used in, I would say, equipment decks because of his colors. But it's a 2/2 with trample. That trample is very cool. Whenever it attacks, draw a card for each aura and equipment that's attached to it. So he may not be getting a buff automatically from the auras we put onto it, but that draw is going to help us out. And he has trample, so he makes for a good thing to put auras on. A thing that you have to run in any aura equipment deck, in my opinion, is Armored Sky Hunter. This is great out of Commander Legends. 3/3 flying. Whenever it attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library, put an aura equipment onto the battlefield attached to it. If equipment, it will automatically attach. Obviously, auras automatically attach anyway. So Armored Sky Hunter's great. Yes, he only gets that on the attack, not an ETB effect, but great card. And then here's our combo guy that I forgot this card existed, Aura Touch Mage. So there's a card called Boonweaver Giant that is 1 mana more, and Boonweaver says like you can grab a card. Your enchantment can be, your aura can be from the graveyard or hand. This thing can only attach from your library, but the cool thing about it is it costs 1 less, and it's a human that doesn't have any synergies with this deck, but I'm also running it in another deck, and I'll show you, like I said, probably in a week or so, the synergies. But anyway, like I said, when this ETBs, you search the library for an aura, enchant this thing. Obviously, if you're trying to do that and this thing leaves the battlefield, like your opponent bounces it or blows it up, the aura will just go away. But yeah, it's a cool way for you to, it says, otherwise reveal the aura card and put it into your hand. Oh, so the card will still go into your hand. It doesn't completely fizzle. But yeah, for 6 mana, the ability to grab any aura you want out of your library and auto-attach it onto this thing, pretty cool. And as I said, with Colossification, so if you don't have a way to give this thing haste, which is fine, you could bring this guy out, and for 6 mana, this guy would be a 23/23 that would just be tapped and be ready to go for next turn. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Okay, on to the sorceries. We'll try to knock this out pretty quick. Farseek, we like to ramp. Ramper Growth, we like to ramp. Cultivate, we like to ramp. Decimate, as you guys know by now, because this is the 3rd Gruul colored deck that I've uploaded today. I like the value on that. Explosive Veggies, because we like to ramp. Okay, Retether. So this is another one of those like rebound cards that basically like, okay, you got rid of one thing. So Retether says, return each aura card from your graveyard to play. Only creatures can be enchanted this way. So as long as you have one creature, even if it's one of like your cost reducers, you won't really care because the ability to buff up one of your creatures by all your auras is pretty awesome. Sky Shroud Claim, you guys know what that does. Here's a win card, a win con card. Chandra's Ignition. This is what I used to kill my opponents last time, and I believe Uril, I got him up to a 27/27, so I did 27 damage to each other creature and each of my opponents. I think I had like 2 other creatures that I didn't care about, because in this deck, we don't care that much. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. Like I said, we don't run a ton of creatures. Normally, we only have 1 or 2 at the most, so that's okay. Another great card, Single Combat for 5 mana. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Cool with us because, like I said, we don't run... We're really only wanting to rely on one creature, and this hoses a lot of other people. Plus, players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. That's great because, once again, we can get by without playing a lot of creatures. They normally can't. Traverse the Outlands. This is how we get all of our lands out of our deck onto the battlefield because Uril's going to be gigantic, or some other creature might be gigantic. Winds of Wrath. Destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted. They can't be regenerated. This is a card I've been wanting to use for a while. Excuse me. Rishkar's Expertise. Another one that's... Obviously, Rishkar's Expertise is great in any green deck, just about, but it's especially great in this deck. We're going to draw a ton of cards, and then we get to cast something 5 mana or less without paying its mana cost. AKA Chandra's Ignition or Traverse the Outlands or Winds of Wrath or anything else you want to pick. Single Combat. All those are 5 mana. That's great synergy, in my opinion. And lastly, for the sorceries, Boundless Realms. I've explained what this card does before, but basically the amount of lands that we currently control, we go grab that many basics and put them on the battlefield tapped. So that's great. Okay, let's finish it up. We got 3 artifacts, so we run the medallions because Uril has generic mana that we can reduce. So there you go. That's it for that. The white one really puts in work. And then lastly, we got 2 instants. Ram Through, which I completely forgot this card existed, and then I was going up against my buddy like a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh yeah, forgot about Ram Through. I was like, that's a good one. So the reason, like, here's what's cool about it. There's a lot of cards that will say target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and if it has trample, do X's damage. That's not what this says. This says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power target creature you don't control. Therefore, they never fight, which means Uril doesn't take damage back, or any other creature you pick doesn't take damage back, which is great. If the creature you control has trample, which Uril doesn't have trample, but we have a ton of cards to give something trample, which is great. Excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So I have a feeling we're going to be able to kill a lot of people with this card. Lastly, we run Soul's Fire. Target card you control deals damage equal to its power to any target. Well, Uril's going to be gigantic, or something else will be gigantic, and we can just close games out with that. That's it for the deck profile. Like I said, I've only had this like basically a week where it's actually been fully built. I mean, I just got the last of the cards today in the mail, but I was running a few fillers. But this deck is really fun. I really love it. This is, I guess, a card that people, it was popular back in the day as a commander, but now nobody runs it anymore. When I first started trying to build this, trying to find a deck profile for it on YouTube, slim to none. I mean, there was like four. And I'm like, how could that be? I mean, a lot of the deck profiles from this for this guy were like 8 years old because obviously nobody's like I guess trying to build him anymore. But he's fun. I love it. Like I said, I'd run this guy even without the hexproof, but with the hexproof, I mean, my opponents were telling me after the last week, they were like, man, they're like, I can't, I don't have an answer for him because like I just run targeted removal and I can't do anything about it. It's like, yeah, sorry. But anyway, that's it for the deck profile. We're right at like 25 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, I like explaining my deck, so you feel free to skip through if you like don't want to hear that. But like I said, I like explaining my choices. I'm mixed because part of me, wants to just skip really fast and go, hey, you know what this card does, you know what this card does. But I also think about I was a new player a few years ago, and I'm like, when I was a new player, I wanted people to explain why they're playing that card, and I might not know what it does right away. So if you hear me explaining cards, it's not because I think most of my audience is stupid. It's just there might be new players that don't exactly know everything. So anyway, that's it for the deck profile. I love this deck. Very happy I built it. Like I said, new deck. It's an older card, but new deck, and it's really awesome. So anyway, have a good one, guys.